Amukta has been involved with school education for the past few decades. She has worked in a variety of situations, setting up and helping learning centers, schools, and teacher development programs in rural and urban India. She has worked with small schools and also developed programs that have been implemented by the education departments across a state or many states in India. She has straddled the worlds of alternative and mainstream education and all shades in between. Wherever she has worked, she has fought for the child's right to live and learn spontaneously. So she runs. She is the founder of Schoolscape, which is a center for educators, and it hosted 12th International Democratic Education Conference in 2004 in Bhubaneswar, Orissa, and she also recently convened another IDEC conference in Bangalore in 2018. She helped some states in India to formulate their annual work plan and budget for education and has been an independent consultant to government education departments. And she has done a lot. I have a long list, but I will go to a few short reflections on what she has done. Her association with International Democratic Education Movement began in 2000 when she was invited by the IDEC, International Democratic Education Conference organizers, which was held in Tokyo that year, based on an article she wrote about democracy in schools. She, along with a team, organized IDEC 2004 in Bhubaneswar, like I've already said. So let's welcome her. She has also organized this year's INDEC conference, which is going to happen on the 6th of November. This will be conference inside conference. So she will explain about that towards the end, hopefully, you know. So let's listen to her. Thank you, Amukta ma'am, for being with us. Let's start. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Veda and Ramchandra ji, and able to make this happen. I'm happy to be here to share my explorations and discoveries, trying to understand and fathom two of my long-term interests in yoga and the Montessori approach to learning. Let me start with a disclaimer that I have only kind of surfaced the Yoga Sutras. I don't know much about them, but what I learned was from my teacher, Desikacharya. When he was teaching me yoga, I used to ask him many questions, and fed up with my questions, he said, let's start learning the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So just for me and one more person, he started and slowly joined by another third person. He started teaching us the Yoga Sutras. And slowly, as people joined in, he made it like a formal course in yoga. This was at Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram in Chennai, at that time Madras. Krishnamacharya was Desikacharya, my teacher's father, and his teacher too. He was from Mysore originally and also had encouraged B.K.S. Iyengar, his brother-in-law, into yoga. While I was practicing and learning yoga, along with my another friend, Aarti, who's, I think, hopefully here, as we learned yoga, we were also teaching at the Krishnamurti school, which had just started in Madras at that time. And I had come back from my Montessori training, and this was my first job practicing Montessori. I did not see the connection between Montessori and yoga at that time, but after some years when I was reading my notes, I suddenly saw the parallels and wrote it out in a kind of like sutras. The Montessori paras were also, the connections were written out as like sutras. And I did an informal presentation at Aero Conference in 2007 or 6, maybe 7, I think. But I am now in the process of shifting, so I can't find that paper and I can't lay my hands on it. So this has created a new, what I'm going to discuss now is created a new for IDEC 2020 Nepal. When Veda asked me to do a presentation, I thought this is the time perhaps to revisit and to review and see this discovery of correspondence between the two approaches to learning and the preparation of the mind, the intellect, and see if it still holds true, or was that really just a flight of my imagination. And what a better place than Sri Aurobindo Yoga Ashram in the abode of Himalayas. Now we can only see it with our mind's eye and heart. And I wish we could be there sometime soon. So thank you, Ramchandraji, for making this happen. Veda and Abel for all the logistics and your team behind you. These are difficult times, and to do this around this time is, I'm sure we all understand your difficulties. And a joy to be with everyone here.
That's good.
Yeah.
Better. Yeah.
Yes.
Good?
Yeah.
This is best. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You can go on to the third one, Veda. So here, Patanjali's says, the exposition of the yoga starts now, atha meaning now, and importance also being given to the now, the here and now. And also it implies from the commentary made by others and by Desikacharya that it's not just an intellectual study, but it includes the practice as well. And that the learner and the teacher work together and they both are committed to learning. So if you look at Montessori's point of view, she assumes that the child is interested in learning. We don't have to help the child, to motivate the child, to energize the child to learn, but the child is naturally inclined to learn, and all we need to do is create the right environment for the child. Otherwise, if you see many education programs, we assume that the child is not interested in learning, so we have to force feed the child or make it entertainment. I mean, very often alternatives schools get into to make it interesting for the child, to make it entertaining for the child, which, and again, the assumption is the same, that the child is not interested. But if we assume that the child is, then all we need to do is to create the right environment for the child to learn and to be himself or herself. The other is that the teachers spiritually also prepare to follow the child in a sense of, it seems like like a cliche when we say that, follow the child, but it means that we observe the child and see where the child wants to go and look at the rhythm of the child and then do things. It's not a curriculum that we press upon the child willy-nilly, whether the child is interested or not. So the teacher also does not pass on knowledge as such, but shows the path to acquire it through the child's own work. And the practice, while doing the practice, the child gains the knowledge or whatever it is aimed at. Shall we see the next one? Yeah. So here it says the yoga is off the mind. It's not only a physical exercise. And in the commentary, what we've understood is that, say, Ayurveda is mainly for the body, and yoga is for the intellect and for the mind more so. And the Vedanta is for the spiritual part of the body, for the human being. The emphasis is on that, but in all three are interconnected. So yoga is not just of the body or of just the mind, both are connected. And Montessori, if you look at, and what the commentary also means is that we have to read into the sutras are so simple and, but have so much meaning, inner meanings in it, that we have to read into it quite a lot. And that is why we need a teacher. So here it says that the modifications of the mind are important in a sense of the mind is not just by itself. There are many areas to it. There are many extensions to it. And there's both an internal and an external part of it. And the mind can concentrate whether it's on something concrete or on something abstract. So, concentration is also what Montessori focuses on quite a lot and feels that that is the key to the child's development. And this too, the child is born with, in a sense, right from the time the child is a young baby, there's an attentiveness in the child. Very often, we have found even in studies that uh, we see the term paying attention. The child is not able to pay attention. I feel that's a different idea altogether from being attentive. So, attention, paying attention is to some adult or some activity which we give the child or the student, but being attentive internally is something that comes naturally to the child. Montessori also offers a lot of materials because that's a means to be able to focus and concentrate. One of the ideas is that. And the materials are, in a way, we say they're concretized abstractions. Whatever we want the child to learn or to be exposed to, we offer it via material because the children learn through their senses and through an experience. And the abstract is embodied in the material. So if you look at even for young children, whether we see color tablets or the geometry shapes, they are embodied of the abstract idea of it. So this helps also when the child works with the material to work with the head, heart, and hand, and bringing all the energies together and keeping aside other disturbances. So, which creates an inner calmness. Very often we see that in our Montessori environments, both in the CASA, that is for 3 to 6 year olds, and the elementary, 6 to 12. When children work, that some calmness comes in and that restlessness somewhat kind of sheds away their restlessness, whatever activity. So this link between concentration and calmness is critical, and the process is through work with the head, heart, and hand. Can we see the next one? Three, I think. Maybe we've jumped a slide. So it's so beautiful, actually, if you see the sutras. I mean, you can just get immersed in it. Here it says the real seer, the one who sees, is there in nature, in oneself. So what Montessori says is that also, let me go back to the commentary a bit. Here, Desikachaya says that the self is there in oneself, in the nature of oneself, and the ability to understand the object fully and correctly is through the to that self, to that person who is observing, that is oneself, and it can be apparent for the object, whether it's fully or correctly, is apparent to the seer, to the one who sees. So the mind may fluctuate, but if we continue with the concentration, then the personality inside one emerges. So if you look at Montessori also, I mean, I found it in the sutra quite closely connected, where when the child is able to concentrate and is given the opportunities to do so, the child's true nature emerges. This often we call normalization in the 3 to 6 environment in the preschool area. And elementary also, we see that it works differently, but the terminology of normalization happens, which means that the child sheds what all he has picked up from living in this world for as many years as he has, uh, and adapting to that. The child adapts so quickly that certain things kind of becomes part of himself and or herself, and he doesn't know which he has got from the environment and which is truly his. So the child, a normalization process helps the child to be in touch with their own true nature, and that emerges. Very often in the CASA, in the 3 to 6 environment in the classroom, a child, initially when the child comes in, is very eagerly says yes, yes to the teacher, to the adult, because he's new, he doesn't know the adult, etc. But at some point, when his true nature emerges, he's able to say no to this adult, to this giant in the classroom. If he's able to do that, when he knows that we are in charge, we are the adults, etc., that takes courage. And that is, he's being true to his own nature, that he is able to say no. And that is what we wait for in the Montessori environment, so that the child is able to say no and listen to, not to the teacher, but listen to his own self. So when this focus happens and when the true nature emerges or surfaces, the child, while working with the material, is able to garner from it the essence of the material. Let's talk about, many of you may know of it, but if you look at, say, colors, I'll give you the same examples, in a sense, materials, the color tablets or geometric cabinet, where we are trying to introduce colors. We don't give the names of the colors or the names of the shapes initially. We help the child to experience it by matching or sorting, etc. And the child, when he sees the colors, there's nothing else distracting the child. So the colorness of the color comes out and he feels for that. The triangleness of the triangle jumps out, and then that is becomes his friend in a way. So though he has been, say, eating from the same plate for the last so many years, when he's introduced to shape, suddenly he says, "Oh, my plate is a circle. Oh, this sari is red." So the same environment that he's been living in and been exposed to, suddenly when he sees the essence of the whatever concept that we are introducing, number or anything, language, that he sees the whole world through those eyes. And the essence is abstracted by the child. Shall we see the next one? So similar to the earlier one, but here the child becomes one with the material, and the idea is for the child to see the truth of it. Otherwise, the understanding is not there, and there's a miscomprehension. Yoga talks a lot about miscomprehension and not understanding the true nature of things. And here, through practice and through work with the material, one sees the truth of things, so that there's a comprehension and an understanding and a concept that is built up. Otherwise, if that work is not done, then there is the reverse of it. There is no understanding, the concept is not built up, and there's miscomprehension. Shall we go to the next one? So if you can read this. So yoga describes that there are 5 activities, and these are neutral by themselves. They can cause problems or they can be beneficial. That's the way we kind of use them and bring them into our lives. And Montessori talks about human tendencies. Many of you may know of those. So, a tendency to, there are different tendencies than what yoga talks about. And these tendencies are also neutral, and how the adult's role is in a way to enable the children to enhance these. They flow like rivers, they're common to all human beings wherever they are. And from the time immemorial till now, tomorrow we don't know what will happen, but these are universal tendencies which are there for all human beings, and they flow like rivers. And how we incorporate them into our life depends on us. And of course, with the children, we as adults need to make it flow, children to flow with these tendencies. Some of these tendencies are to explore, to use the intellect, etc. Some are mentioned in yoga and some are not. Shall we see the next, Veda? Yeah. So Montessori also talks about how arriving at truth is important, and that path is from concrete to the abstraction of ideas. If you look at Aristotle also, he talked about how the mind works through concrete exercises and moves to the abstraction of it, so that the thought can be held from the material that the one can see, say a table in front of us, to a thought of a table, which can be in many forms and many shapes and sizes. To hold that thought, there are about 4 or 5 stages. So Montessori also takes it through that. And yoga talks about how the right knowledge or understanding is important, and the wrong knowledge may lead to delusions. Montessori also talks about how in the uh, memory is one at the surface level, a rote learning that we all know of and familiar with. But there's also another kind of a memory, which is all our experiences are in a way held by that. And she uses the word engrams for that. And the traces of that are always held in these engrams. And I mean, for us, a lot of the deja vu kind of experiences that we get are because of this. And also, say, children, when we, elementary school especially, when we say, do you remember this? We usually start with that. And so it kind of touches and activates the engrams, so that that experience that they've had some time ago comes back to the surface. And this is, in a way, yoga later talks about deep sleep and how that helps the consciousness of the person, and makes it go into the memory. Some of the experiences go into the memory, into a deep memory. There are many ways of looking at each sutra, and I'm trying to look at it from a learning point of view, from an education point of view. We can go look at it from a spiritual point of view or any other, but I'm trying to focus on the education and the learning. So if you look at this, the next one, yeah. So here the path also of, how do we infer, how do we use our intelligence is talked about in the sutra. And Desika Shah says that the comprehension is based on direct observation of the object and the inference or the reference to reliable authorities. So that's taken as the truth for some time till a new truth appears. So our perception is always, and our understanding is always temporary in a sense, because there's always a further truth to it. I'll give you an example. I mean, for younger children, usually we say that the sun rises in the east, and that is the truth for that time being. But later on, we say, no, the sun doesn't rise in the east, it doesn't move at all. It's the earth that rotates. And that is the truth for that age, for that time, because that child is able to comprehend. Later on, we say the sun does move. Again, we say go back on our earlier truth. That's also a truth. And this truth saying that there's a movement of the sun from the Uttarayanan and the Dakshayan. We talk about that. So, and also sometimes we say there's a wobble in the sun. So these are layers of truth in a sense. None of them are false, but based from our experiential learning, they're all truths. And so those layers of truth need to be unraveled as we go further and be in touch with our experience. It's not that you give it as an intellectual data or information to the child right from day one saying there is a wobble in the sun, but the child's experience will not allow that to be a truth. So we have to consider the child where the child is or the learner is, whether it's adult or child, where the learner is, and offer the truth at that age and for that level. So the truth is always temporary till something else happens and we get to know another truth. So we'll go to the next one, 8th one. I'm giving you time to read the sutra. So we're looking at the nature of things and the essence of things, whatever is in our world and whatever we come across. And that is our quest in a way. We want to make some understanding of it. We want to create our own patterns for it. And we want to go as much as possible to as near to the truth as possible. So Montessori, if you see, also focuses on reality. Often in schools, we feed them with fairy tales and different stories, myths and legends. But the reality is important. The world itself is wonderful, and the child has come into the world without knowing what this world is about. And so the beautiful world has to be offered to the child rather than what does not happen. What happens itself and what occurs and what is real itself is fascinating for the child. So in the Montessori environment, both in the CASA and the elementary, we focus a lot on what is real and real stories about animals, about people, about plants, about anything in the universe. So we tell them actually in the elementary, the story of the universe initially, as soon as they come in when they're about 6 years old. And then the whole world is there for them. So we say that Montessori says that in the earlier environment, where the 3 to 6, the children are younger, we give them the keys to the world so that they understand the world better and see the reality of it. The elementary child, with the imagination being set in, and the universe is also not enough for the child to explore, but the universe is what we know as the largest entity. So we give the keys to the universe. So whatever happens in the universe is opened out to the elementary child. And if we talk of errors here, I mean, in yoga and the Yoga Sutra, they talk about misconception and incorrect and false knowledge. How do we do that in the Montessori environment? So the errors, in a way, we don't point out really to the child, but we enable the child to see for themselves what their errors are. And there's also a social control. Others are there in the environment, children, and they take it much better from the other children, their peer group. And the teacher's role is to observe and redo it in a way so that the child, we are not giving again knowledge, but we're helping the child to go in the right direction to find the truth. Shall we see the next slide? Any discussion you want, any questions? We can do that at the end, maybe. So if you look at the 9th sutra, I'm doing only 10 so here, and just opening it out for you. So if you look at the 9th one, so here we're talking also about imagination, which can be based on just the word. So after experiencing the world and the reality of an object or a matter or an idea, then the imagination can take to something which is not there, which is abstract, which is empty, which does not have a form. So this also leads to a kind of a perception of what is possible, what may not be in the world, but it can be imagined by human beings. And Desikacha says that if these are given to understand things that are not there, if we use words that are poetical or theatrical, it touches and it goes beyond and it touches the child's imagination, the adult's imagination. And they contribute to the further mental activity. So Montessori, as some of you may know, she feels that imagination, and we've seen it in our work with children, imagination is like a power which comes in when they're about 6 years old and which needs to be constructed. It is initially amorphous, but with the experience, the child can construct that imagination by themselves. How it works is the experience of what is here in front of us. The child touches, say, the tree in the garden, and then can imagine all the trees in the world. Can look at experience the river nearby, and then imagine or think about all the different kinds of rivers in the whole world. So we also offer stories through lofty language. It's poetic, it's in a story form, it's a narration which touches the child's heart and intelligence. So I invite you all to the elementary class sometime to see the kind of stories that we tell them and the kind of language that we use. Shall we see the next? So here, I think the Yoga Sutra is talking about deep sleep, how the unconscious and the conscious are connected also. And they make a difference between samadhi and nidra. Whereas samadhi is a tamasic state, nidra is the other way around. Samadhi is a sattvic state and nidra is tamasic. And both, there's a difference in the way the mind works in both the states, whether it's deep sleep the mental activity doesn't stop, but the brain is disengaged from the mind in a sense. They say that like the engine of a car keeps running, but it's out of gear, so the car doesn't move, but the throbbing of the engine continues. Montessori talks a lot. She was in the world when Freud and Jung were all discussing their ideas, and there were events and there were people. Their ideas became popular. So she also worked with them and worked mostly with Freud's daughter Anna, and she talked a lot about the unconscious and the subconscious and how they play a role in learning. The idea of the core and periphery also, I think, is important here when we're talking about, this cognition and how one can support that and how the mind can be constructed in a way. So the core and the periphery idea of Montessori's is that every human being has a core and a core, which is in a way the person's secret, the child's secret also. And we don't try to attempt that, to go there as another person, as an adult, as a teacher, but we respect that core. But what is available to us is the periphery, and that is why observation is so important, that we can observe what the child is doing. We can see the child's body language. We can see his language. We can observe all those which are the periphery. And from there, deduct what the child is going through or where the child is and help that periphery. So, what we offer as presentations or as ideas to the child is to that periphery. And that is our work. And what is the child's work is that the child takes it in, absorbs it into himself or herself, and works with that idea so that it comes out in another way where he applies it to the world. So if you see, normal general regular classes, we often take a lesson and then at the end of the lesson we ask questions to the child, as if it's so easy for the child to digest all that. So we are thinking that it's a surface level kind of learning, whereas Montessori thinks the child has to work with the idea, work with the concept, and that's his work. We don't interfere with that. And it then the child, when he again surfaces and shows on the periphery that the work he has done is, he applies it, he talks about it, then we again observe and then we can take the child further. So we are not attempting to go to the child's core as such. That is not our role. That is the child's work and the child's entity, which we need to respect. So, and that is where the unconscious and the conscious also play, so that the child makes the learning deep and it is integrated into the whole child. I would like to stop here. This is only about 1/3 of the. Shall we see the next slide? I think it's just with the sutras. I'd like to stop here. Veda, can we see the next slide? Yeah, we can play this. Just to hear a little bit of chanting. This is Krishnamacharya on the right and one of his serious students, Ramaswamy.
विप्रज्ञापूर्वक इतरेषां तीव्रसंवेगानामासन्नः
Veda, put your microphone away.